Hi, Dr. Peterson. This is Hannah Frink. I'm going to be talking about my StrengthsFinder 2.0 results. I think I actually have the newer book. I have the Strengths-Based Leadership from 2008, but I'm assuming that it is covering the same 34 strengths and 4 main domains. So looking at my top 5 strengths right off the bat, the first one is restorative. When we look at this one, those who are restorative are good at handling problems. My second is analytical. These people tend to search for reasons and causes. The third is focus. They are good at taking direction, prioritizing, and staying on task. And then responsibility, taking ownership and is committed. The fifth is significance, which means that these individuals want to make a big impact. So looking at these 5 themes, when we take them and kind of categorize them down into the top 4 domains of leadership, I obviously fall heavy in that executing domain. Overall, I found my results really interesting because I guess as a teacher, I anticipated results like learner, empathy, etc. And so getting things like analytical and restorative were a little surprising to me at first. However, when we take those first 3 that fall under that executing domain, according to the text, leaders that are restorative, responsible, and focused are continuously willing to make things better, set difficult to reach goals, and always contemplate their obligations. Furthermore, these leaders strive to do things right and have a desire to save and or help others. When I take those things and I break it down a little bit more, I can see how it directly applies to who I am as a person and my profession as an educator. Looking at the effectiveness of the assessment. First and foremost, I really think that strength-based leadership offered a great insight to personal strengths. However, I feel unless you really understand your personality, that this assessment should not stand on its own. Just reflecting back on how it was used in Dr. Bradbury's 785 course, it was paired with Standout 2.0 by Marcus Buckingham, and then What Type Am I by Barron. And so Barron is going to look at personality types. So for example, I'm an INFJ, and I discovered that first, then completed, the Standout 2.0 assessment, and then ended actually with this assessment that we did for this class. And had that been done in a reverse order, I don't think I would have necessarily understood my results and why they appeared the way they did. But being able to piece everything together made total sense. Having completed all those other assessments, I do have to say that I really appreciate StrengthsFinder's 34 themes that and that 5 strengths were identified and classified into a domain of leadership, because conversely, Standout 2.0 actually only addressed 2 major strengths, and I feel like as a result, it left many gaps. For Standout 2.0, I believe there was only 9 strengths that you would identify with. Excuse me. Overall, I felt well assessed with all of the questions asked. If I recall, I did this back in, it would have been the end of May. I think there was roughly 150 questions, whereas Standout 2.0, I think, had like 35 to 50. And as a result, I really struggled to agree with what Standout 2.0 had to say about my leadership skills. So therefore, in my opinion, I believe that this assessment is more valid just because it had a wider array of questions. Overall, I guess my last critique, and I don't know that this necessarily pairs with the assessment, but I wish the textbook would have further discussed the 4 domains of leadership strength. I know I'm biased because 3 of my 5 strengths fall under the executing domain. So I guess as a result, the way the text is set up, where it breaks down each strength in the latter half of the book, is probably more beneficial for most individuals who complete the assessment. But for myself personally, I guess I wish it would have maybe zoned in on the individual domains rather than just giving examples of people who possess those domains, because the domains and the themes don't always, I guess, correlate. Using my results moving forward, I opted to actually break down each one, just because as I look at them, I feel that each is significant. So restorative is considered to be my top strength. And I think many of the elements that it is composed of, that I do them well. I guess if I continue to perfect this strength, like helping others personally and professionally, I really believe it could encourage me to expand my employment opportunities into student affairs. One day I'd like to work my way into higher education. And I feel that this strength, if I continue to work at it, will really open doors for me. My analytical strength, I feel like this is one that I could actually tone down. Those who are analytical tend to always compare scores and be at the top. And I've been like this my whole life. And in grad school, I'm constantly feeling the need to prove my abilities. I think a lot of it right now stems from the fact that I'm actually the youngest person in my doctoral cohort. And so by having this innate desire to prove who I am, I add a lot of added stress into my life, which I don't necessarily need. So by maybe, again, toning this down, I would have the ability to focus in on some other strengths that could be further developed. Looking at the focus strength, I often dedicate myself to one purpose, which means that many other aspects of life get ignored. And predominantly, I feel like it's oftentimes my family. I would like to see myself find a better balance and perhaps try to grow in the achiever strength, which wasn't really identified in my top 5. But achievers tend to try to work hard with others rather than isolating themselves. And so maybe if I can be more open-minded, particularly like at work, rather than taking things on just by myself. If I open it up to my teammates and those in my PLC, I'll take some of that stress away and it won't have to carry home into my home life. Responsibility, I tend to overcommit, which causes the strength to go into overdrive. I know that I need to learn to say no more often and focus on clear communication for my abilities. And so that said, the communication strength is something that I think I could really expand on as well. And the last one, significance. I feel of all the strengths that this is probably the one I have the most room to improve upon. Oftentimes, I don't always take the time needed to understand why things fail, and I respond impulsively. I'm usually quick to understand my impulsivity and apologize, but it still can get me in quite a few predicaments. So moving forward, I know that I need to be more patient and trust the process. And in doing so, I think I'm going to see the positive results that I'm after. Overall, when I look at the results of this assessment and how they work together, I guess I see things not necessarily in how they always interact with one another, but how I can improve those strengths or maybe even tone them down. Because like I said, I didn't necessarily get the results I anticipated, but the results make a lot of sense. And I would actually contend that the results more often than not actually highlight good characteristics, but good characteristics that follow with some negative outcomes. Just that added stress, that inability to communicate, and maybe a little too much focus, which takes away from other parts of life. I would say that in 5 years, my results, if I took this assessment again, would be very different, simply because I would be done with grad school and maybe have a better balance of life and things like that moving forward. Overall, I really enjoyed this assessment. Like I said, it pairs well with some of the other ones that we did for Dr. Bradbury's class in 785. I don't know that I would have liked it on its own, but I really enjoyed learning more about myself in 785 and now having the ability to apply it again for this course. Because it not only allows me to better understand myself, but by having kind of an idea of all these personality types and these leadership strengths, I can start to pick that out, not only in other adults, but even my students in 7th grade. And I think that it really applies to college students as well. So thank you for this assignment. It was really nice to revisit the results from just a couple of months ago.